Hello there. My name is Peter Thompson, and I've been a golf professor for a long time now. I've been teaching for 45 years, and it's, to me, is the best part of the game. Improving people's golf is what I enjoy the most. To improve people's golf, I have spent a long time observing very good golfers, top golfers, open champions, good amateur golfers, good lady golfers, and I then try and find the common denominators. And these are obviously movements that are common, and most good golfers tend to make them. This DVD is about just one of those denominators, and it's about the movement of the hips. The hip movement, to me, is extremely important, and we need to understand the factual movements rather than the theoretical movements. I spent a long time looking at golf theories and then looking at real golfers playing real golf in real competitions, winning open champions, etc. And they quite often do not follow the theories. So I gave up working on theories a long time ago, and I just simply work on facts. And in the course of this DVD, you'll see quite a few brilliant golfers actually moving their hips in a certain way. So we work on facts, not theories. I'm going to show you now, I'm going to walk over to my computer and show you Ross Fisher, who won the World Match Play last year, and we'll see what he does with this hip movement. Let's go and have a look. So Ross Fisher's coming up now, and there he is. And we're going to not study the whole swing. Don't forget, this DVD is just about what the hips should or should not be doing. So I'm going to draw an arrow on his right hip, and we'll discuss later on why he's doing what he's doing, but the important thing is this is what he's going to do. So we're going to play his backswing now, nice and slowly, and stop it at the top of the backswing, and you can now see the right hip has moved probably 4 inches away from the arrow. So if that's what he's doing, and he's a brilliant golfer, I've never met him, but I believe he's a really nice chap as well. I've never met him, and he's moving his right hip away from that arrow. We'll watch that again. And the hips drive forward even further away from the arrow, like Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus used to start his backswing by swiveling his hips, turning his hips. We'll watch Ross Fisher again. So try and focus on the hip movement, forget the arms for a second, forget the knees and the body weight transference and the head and the arms. Just look at the hips. That's what the hips have done, and that's a fact. So I'm now going to show you another golfer, Bobby Jones. And Bobby Jones, back in the 1920s, 1930s, he was an outstandingly good amateur golfer. In fact, as an amateur golfer, he won 4 US Opens, beating all the pros. He won 5 US Amateurs, beating all the amateurs. He won 3 British Opens, beating all the pros, and won 1 British Amateur Championship. And in 1930, age of 28, he stopped playing competitive golf, because as far as he was concerned, he couldn't do any better. Tips. Now this is an old film, very old film, and the principle is the same. I'll draw a little line on his right hip pocket, and then we're going to watch and see what the right hip pocket does in the swing. And you can see already the club head's hardly moved and the hips are turning. The hips have to turn your chest. Your chest has to turn so you can move your arms, and there's a huge big hip turn, maybe 70 degrees. We'll watch it again. Wearing a collar and tie, which we can't see, and there's the tie because the hips are turning to allow the shoulders to turn, to allow the arms to move back, to allow the swing plane, etc. to slot into place. So that's a huge big hip turn. I'll just show you that once more at normal speed. And that man was a golfing genius. So I'm going to go back on the mat now, and we'll just discuss a few more things about the hip. The hip movement is key, because if the hips turn pretty well, everything above the hips, i.e. the chest, arms, wrist, golf club, have got a good chance of moving back correctly, and everything below the hips, i.e. thighs, feet, knees, have also got a good chance of working correctly. This is the pole I use every day for my golf lessons, and I want you to watch this end of the pole, the right end of the pole. See where it goes. It goes round, and it goes upwards. Watch the other end of the pole. This is what the left hip's going to do, this side over here. Then the left hip goes down, and it goes round. This happens because when you dress the ball, you're leaning forward, and your left chest will go down, your left knee will go down, so therefore your left hip will also go down. Simply has to. You've probably heard many times to keep the hips parallel. Well, that's impossible, because if your left shoulder's going down and your left knee's going down, how can your hips possibly turn round on a parallel line? So it's that. Good exercise this. Hold the pole or a club with your right hand, pull the right hip back, which pulls the left one and moves the knees and the weight correctly. So you can start back by moving your right hip or your left hip. Bobby Jones used to move his left hip. Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Greg Norman use their right hip. Doesn't matter, because they sort of basically join together, so left or right. I prefer the right one, so the right hip can pull the left hip. The amount of hip turn you achieve, or need to achieve, comes from your feet. If I turn my left foot a long way to the left and my right foot a long way to the left, and then try and turn my hips round, well, they actually won't go, because the knees, feet are stopping the hip turn, and if you can't turn your hips, you certainly cannot turn your shoulders far enough. If I then do the opposite and turn my feet out to the right and then turn my hips round, I've now got a 90-degree hip turn. Fantastic, you might think. But I've now got about a 145-degree shoulder turn. Don't need that, because when I try and swing forward, I'm completely stuck. So we need a compromise, something in the middle. And if you can achieve this with your feet, it'll simply improve your hip turn. Have the right one more or less pointing out straight, left one turned out maybe 20-30 degrees, and then automatically, if you turn your hip, your hips will turn about 45 degrees, which is more than enough usually, and your shoulders will turn about 90 degrees, which again is plenty. If you're not very flexible, you may want to position your feet. Right one maybe a fraction out, but only a fraction. Left one maybe a fraction in, and that will make you turn more in the backswing, which is fine. The danger then is you can't turn through correctly. So I'd recommend that you keep your right foot fairly straight, turn the left one out, and that will give you usually enough turn in the backswing, and just as important, loads of club head speed as you turn through the other way. One of the images that I use, it's quite a graphic image, is this. If you address the ball and imagine someone standing behind you with a chainsaw against your right hip, then what you will do is you will automatically turn your hip away from the chainsaw. I teach that to most people, and they pretty soon get the idea of turning the right hip away from the chainsaw. Or if you just hold your hand there, your hip turns away from your hand. Or if a friend stands behind with a club, then you can turn your right hip away from that line. I'm going to show you now Ben Hogan and someone that I teach on my computer screen, and then you'll see exactly where the right hip should go in the backswing. I'll explain a little bit more why as we show you their swings. So here's Ben Hogan, and I'm going to draw the arrow on his right hip, and please don't look at every single part of the swing, because this DVD, this lesson is just about the hips, because you need to have it clear in your mind what they should be doing. They control lots of swing, lots of parts of the swing. Everything above the hips and below the hips are controlled by the hips. So we'll watch Ben Hogan, and there's the right hip moving quite a long way away from that arrow. So I don't know, 3 inches, 4 inches, same as Ross Fisher really. Then he can drive forward a long way and get all the weight into the front leg. You use the hip turn, chest, arm movement to create club head speed. We'll watch that one again. Again, old film, Ben Hogan, I suppose one of the best strikers of a golf ball ever. I never saw him play, unfortunately. And there's the hip turn, chest turn, allowing the arms to go back so his left arm can stay dead straight, which is, I think, quite a good thing. Then the hips can drive forward. Drives forward so far that, interestingly, behind his head there's a lady in the stands, and she wasn't visible at address. Can't see the lady. Now his head's dropped as he squats, then his head body goes a long way forward, so now she becomes very visible. I'll just show you that at normal speed. So there's Ben Hogan moving his right hip away from that arrow. I'm going to show you now someone I teach. And I taught Mark for a long time, 5-6 years, and he actually went round a golf course in the tournament, pro tournament. He's a golf pro. He went round in 12 under par, gross 60, which is an amazing score. He also shot a gross 61 and a gross 62 and lots of other brilliant scores. So we'll watch his right hip. This is in my teaching studio. There's the hip on the arrow. And there's the hip moving away from the arrow. That's the key move. The right hip moves away from the arrow, almost towards the target. Then he can drive forward and produce that outstandingly good impact position with the left arm leading the shaft. The hips allow that to happen. So I'll play that one again. Frame by frame, this is the GASP lab system, which works pretty damn well. Allows me to see old golfers, new golfers, current golfers, and for teaching it's brilliant. So there's the hip moving away from the line, and there's a superb impact position. So the right hip is going to move away from the arrow. You might wonder why the hip moves away from the arrow or the line or the chainsaw, depending on how you see it. The reason is this. Most people don't really understand this, but it's pretty important. Your hips are wider in this direction than they are in this direction. So I'll just repeat that. Your hips, almost everybody's hips, are wider this way, crossways, right to left, than they are from back to front. So, because they are wider, this angle, as you turn them, this hip simply goes that way. If you imagine this pole is now pretty wide, if I turned it around that way, it actually becomes just the size of the end of the pole. Same thing. Turns that way. Turns that way. What you shouldn't try and do in the backswing is transfer your weight, because if you do, your hips will go sideways, and you're not really transferring your weight properly anyway. Weight transference in the backswing is pretty automatic. If you turn your hips correctly from a good starting position and turn your shoulders correctly, your weight will go where it needs to go, which is just inside the right heel. So when you dress the ball, your right hand is below the left hand, so your hips have just pushed a little bit to the left, because your right shoulder has to go down to get your right hand on the golf club. So your hips are pushed a bit to the left, weight more or less central. Then your right hip's going to turn, I call it towards the target, just turning that way. And you will turn your hips around as far as you need to allow you to turn your shoulders as far as you need to. It doesn't need to go back a long way, because in the forward swing, that's when you have the speed. Shoulder turn in the backswing about 90 degrees, in the forward swing up to 270 degrees. Hip turn in the backswing about 45 degrees, hip turn in the forward swing up to 135 degrees. So the hip turn, shoulder turn in the forward swing creates speed, the backswing simply gives you position. Hips go this way in the backswing, or that way, then your chest changes angle, your weight moves all over the place, your head goes all over the place, so this movement allows the rest of your body to stay in position. I mentioned before about the right hip going up, left hip going down, but I want to emphasize that because it's pretty important. Turning your hips level isn't really an option, because to do that you have to turn your shoulders level, and if you watch any good golfer in the entire world, I'll guarantee 100% their left shoulder, their left chest where my badge is, goes down. And if you watch good golfers' left knee, it will go down. If the shoulder's going down and the knee's going down, then your left hip is going to go down, so just let it go down. Left side down, right side goes up. So just to show you a few more facts on my computer screen, because I again I deal in facts rather than theories, we're going to look at somebody else that I teach, and we're going to look at Tiger Woods. Still the best golfer in the world. And this isn't Tiger Woods, but this one is. So we're not going to use the arrows on this particular shot because the camera angle is not perfect, but what we are going to do is look at the words KPMG behind his hips. So we'll just get him to swing back, and if you were to focus on that little white line, that's the upright on the K of KPMG, and the right hip is turning towards the target, so the K is now becoming clearer. Look at it now, you can see half of it. We'll watch that again. And he gets a little squat. People talk about Tiger Woods' head going down. Well, that's a very good move because he's the best golfer in the world, so it has to be a good move. He goes down because he squats. There's the left knee going down, there's the left shoulder going down, and his right hip's moved away from the K. Now watch what happens. Now watch the G. It's gone. Hasn't hit the ball. The G's gone. The ball's gone, and at the end of the swing we can see the words KP. Watch that again. If you can get this into your mind, that the hips turn round, right hip turns towards the target. That's what Tiger Woods is doing. So they turn round, then they don't turn the other way. This is pretty crucial. They move to the left and then turn. So the K is now visible, the G is not visible. And that isn't my opinion of how Tiger Woods turned his hips, that's how Tiger Woods turns his hips. We'll watch it at normal speed. Wonderful swing. Hips turn, hips slide, hips turn. Watch it again. hips turn, hips slide, hips turn. One of my pupils now, taught him for about 10 years, handicap was 18 when we started, he's now down to scratch. Nice young chap. Studying at Bristol University at the moment. So we'll put the arrow on his hip. And his hip certainly has not moved into the arrow. So his weight now is inside his right heel, weight in the right place, not a big hip turn, doesn't need to, not a big shoulder turn, doesn't need to. Now he can move his weight into the left leg and produce a fantastic hitting position like that with his hip now 12 inches away from the arrow. We'll watch that one again. Little practice move, then the real swing. And practice moves are pretty important, I think, but not a full practice swing. I think you should not have a full practice swing, just practice moves. That's Philip's practice move, just about halfway back. Hip moving away from the line, then back to the ball, and then try and repeat that. So that's a goal swing that reduces handicap from 18 to 0, scratch, which is a pretty good handicap. So I'm now going to go back onto the mat and show you a few exercises that might just help you to produce that hip turn, which again is the center of the swing. This bit's in the middle. The core, thighs, hips, just above your hips. If they work properly, most things will just follow on. So a few exercises. Chainsaw, good image, please don't try it. Just do not try it. Imagine it's there, turn away from it. Another good one is to have an umbrella, and you put the umbrella in the ground, so the umbrella is just matching the angle of your right leg, and then just turn your right hip away from the umbrella. Another good one is to stand alongside a table and just get your right thigh on the edge of the table, and then you can't go sideways, so you have to turn round. One of my pupils practiced that for about a week, playing off 16 handicap, and I think he scored 46 points in his next competition. Came down 3 shots. That way. Key move. So we'll just go back to the beginning. Feet, control the hip turn, try and get your right foot square, left foot turned out. Then practice pulling your right hip back or pushing your left hip round, like so. That will allow your shoulders to turn, and it will automatically move your weight into the right part of your body, which is inside the right heel. Then you can move your hips to the left and turn them around at the same time, as you saw with those brilliant golfers I showed you on my screen. Facts not theories. There are a few good golfers who will do that, but on average the common denominator is that. I went to the Masters 5 years ago, and I spent 10 hours on the second tee. It's nice and shady under the trees on the second tee, and I just watched their hips, and every one of them went that way, apart from Phil Mickelson, obviously, who went that way, and he went on to win. So control the hip turn to control the swing. I hope you've enjoyed this instructional DVD, and there'll be many more to come, and we'll focus on one part of the swing for each one. Thank you very much.